With the trailer for Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore being released, I remember that I never actually saw its two prequels. The Fantastic Beasts movies are just something that I never actually watched, and I'll get into why here in a little bit, but it's not because I'm not a fan of Harry Potter or the Harry Potter series. I actually really enjoyed those movies. My brother seems to like them a little bit more than I do. He actually has a tattoo of the Deathly Hallows symbol on his forearm, and he actually has a wand display with the same symbol behind his desk. We grew up watching these movies, and I actually enjoy most of them from what I can remember. But when I saw the trailer for Fantastic Four and Where to Find Them, I actually just didn't feel too invested to go and see it. I don't remember the exact reasoning, but I just never did. But now we are going to watch both of these movies just in time for the third one to come out in April. As long as, it doesn't get delayed, because, everything gets delayed nowadays. So let's grab our wands and fasten our suitcase because we are about to watch Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. In this film, we are following a Pokemon master named Newt Scamander after he travels from London to New York City to actually get another Pokemon from a breeder. He is actually carrying his magical Pokemons in the PC, aka his magical briefcase. Shortly after, you get to see a magical cop named Graves inspecting a building that has been decimated by an unknown creature. Newt finds his way to basically a cult leader who is spreading the word of the world of magic to the normies with her adopted children. One of which is Credence, who is played by Ezra Miller, who kind of looks like Rock Lee if he was being raised by a shady orphanage, so it fits pretty well. She tries to recruit Newt when one of his Pokemons gets loose from his briefcase because it likes shiny things and Newt has to go after it. After going inside the bank, he actually meets Jacob, who is a factory worker trying to apply for a loan to basically open up a bakery and has a suitcase full of delicious goodies. And after Jacob gets slapped with a big fat no can do from the bank for getting a loan, he gets zipped off by Newt after saying his egg is hatching. This is actually seen by Tina, who works for the magical police force of New York as well. Newt catches his Pokemons and tries to wipe the mind of Jacob, but Jacob grabs the suitcase and uppercuts Newt and takes off. Tina then takes Newt to headquarters after he lets loose magical Pokemons in the city and for using magic in front of a Muggle, which Americans actually call no-mages. Nope. Anyways. When they arrive, Tina takes Newt to the HBIC, who actually scolds her because she has been demoted for a previous incident, which I feel like is kind of an overused trope in movies when involving law enforcement, but alright. She then takes him over to Graves, and when they look into the suitcase, they see it's a bunch of baked goods. Swapping over to Jacob, you actually see that he has Newt's briefcase, and it opens, and it kind of lets loose a few creatures, one of which bites him, and Newt and Tina actually need to take him somewhere to get help. So far in the movie, there have been a few overused tropes that are kind of seen very often in media, but I already kind of like the pacing of the plot, so let's see how it goes. We then switch over to the cult leader, aka the Other Mother, and she has been brought to Senator Shaw by his brother to talk about the magic users in the city. Of course, Senator Shaw doesn't buy any of it, and does call Credence a freak on the way out. Yeah, I'm sure there won't be any consequences for that later. Newt and Jacob actually meet Tina's sister, Queenie, who can read minds. Jacob falls for her immediately, and Queenie seems to be infatuated with him as well to some degree. Am I talking too fast? I feel like I'm talking too fast. Doesn't matter. Anyways, I usually don't take to characters who are overly flirtatious, but Queenie comes off as pretty genuine and a very likable character. Credence meets up with Graves in secret and talks about getting help locating a kid with immense power, and if Credence helps him, he'll help him get free of his other mother. Newt then takes Jacob in his magical suitcase and actually shows him around to all the different habitats he has for the various creatures that he has stored in there. And I gotta say, even though some of the creatures' CGI doesn't look the most impressive, their designs are phenomenal. Every creature has such a unique appeal to them, and you get to see how Newt legitimately cares for each of them and is very knowledgeable about them as well. That's good stuff. Newt and Jacob then actually go out and look for some of the creatures that got loose and find one robbing a jewelry store and another one that looks like a blubber rhino trying to find a butt buddy at the local zoo. Newt does a very strange mating dance to lure the creature back, but Jacob knocks some of the pheromone onto himself on accident, causing a little fun chase scene, and at the last second, Newt saves Jacob from getting a feel for the blubber rhino's blubber nuggets. Meanwhile, there's a ceremony/meeting that is being held for Senator Shaw when it's actually interrupted by an unseen enemy that gives him the WWE treatment off the top rope and actually kills him, leaving his father and the rest of the room to blame witchcraft. Tina takes Newt's briefcase to the HBIC again, while Jacob and Newt are actually still inside after Shaw's death. The magic police learn that it was an Obscurial that was responsible for his death and actually arrest Tina, Newt, and Jacob for allowing a Muggle, aka Jacob, to learn about the wizarding world. Or I guess a no-mage. No. Alright, I'm saying Muggle. I don't care. While they're locked up, Newt actually explains what an Obscurial is, and it's when magic users suppress their magic for so long that the energy is built up and lashes out, eventually destroying the host. Newt actually has one of these in his briefcase that he extracted from an 8-year-old girl in Africa, which unfortunately killed her in the process. He then explains that none have lived past the age of 10 in recorded history, which means Ash Ketchum is an Obscurial because he hasn't passed the age of 10 in like 40 years. That's how it works, trust me. Alright, moving on. Graves then blames Newt for all the destruction in the city due to his creatures getting loose and sentences both Newt and Tina to death. Queenie overhears the thoughts, I guess, and goes to help them. Newt and Tina are then taken to a room to be put to death where they actually see Tina's memories, and one of them is where she is helping Credence after he was beaten religiously. No pun intended. Newt actually uses one of his Pokemons and they escape, while Queenie saves Jacob and Newt's briefcase. Now during the interrogation scene with Graves, you actually see that he's starting to be a little shady. When he says that the Obscurious is useless without the host, Newt actually ponders about this for a moment and asks, what would you use this child-killing magical parasite for? And Graves looks slightly panicked and sends him to be killed after changing the subject. Don't be suspicious, don't be suspicious, don't be suspicious. Then in the next scene, we see him giving a necklace with the Deathly Hollow symbol on it to Credence. So yeah, something's up with this dude. Some time passes, and while Newt and the gang catch other Pokemons, Graves visits Credence again and says that he will no longer be willing to help him get away from his other mother despite what he said. This angers Credence, and he lets open the 8 inner gates and sets off through the city, leaving a trail of destruction behind him. Now the fact that he was the creature was somewhat obvious, but I like how they tried to play with the idea by making his adopted sister sing songs about killing witches and stuff like that. Makes her seem a little more devious. So I'm sure it tricked somebody. Anyways, Newt says that he can help Credence and goes to find him, and Tina follows. Newt talks him down, then Graves attacking Newt sets him off again. Tina is actually able to talk him back down to his normal human form again, but then he breaks the 8 inner gates again shortly after when the magical police arrive, and then he gets exploded. Graves is actually put under arrest by the HBIC, and he's able to hold his own against the magical Popo for a bit before Newt gets a Pokemon to help hold him down and then reveals that Graves is actually Grindelwald himself. What the fuck? He is taken away, then the HBIC says that everyone in the city needs to forget about the magical people. Newt then says that he has a big giant flying Pokemon just for such an occasion. Pidgeotto flies into the sky and makes it rain, and then anyone who steps into the rain forgets about the magical community. Jacob is actually forced to do so as well, so they say their goodbyes, and yeah, it's a pretty heartfelt goodbye. Until 10 minutes later when he kind of remembers anyway somehow. Don't really know how, but it's probably explained in the next movie. But that's pretty much it. Now, right off the bat, I want to say that this movie was actually pretty good, better than I expected it for a few reasons. For one, we are following around an awkward adult who isn't a powerful wizard, he dislikes people, and he just wants the best for his creatures. Very different from following the chosen boy who lives from the original Harry Potter series. Also, this is mostly in the non-magical world, where in Harry Potter, you're mostly stuck at Hogwarts as well as a few other magical locations. It's a good way to set it apart. Also, with the introduction of a Muggle in the form of Jacob, as well as Newt being a fish out of water because he is coming to America for the first time, they actually get to learn new information for the audience in an organic way without it feeling like forced exposition. The cast of characters actually all worked pretty well together, and I actually really liked the character of Jacob. I also like that he and Queenie basically break the stereotypical couple from a fantasy story, because Queenie is a beautiful woman, and let's face it, Jacob isn't exactly going to be on the cover of GQ. So that's a nice touch. The arc for Credence was also pretty well written, because having a magical kid being raised by a woman who wants to expose and destroy all forms of magic is a good reason for him to suppress it. And then because he gets mentally and physically abused, it makes even more sense that that magic would then lash out as the embodiment of chaos, because while suppressing his magic, he is in constant fear, sadness, and pain. Now clearly Credence is the oldest Obscurial that has ever lived, since Newt said that in recorded history they've never lived past 10, and clearly Credence is roughly in his late teens. He may have been able to live so long since he was somewhat able to control the Obscurial, or at least aim it at those who did him wrong. Shaw for the insults, the other mother for the beatings, and Graves for betraying him. It almost turns his story from one of trauma to like revenge, like the Obscurial represents the primal instinct to protect the host when something presents itself as a threat. This story flows so well from one plot point to the next, but there are a few things that I have slight issues with. For one, the Blubber Rhino seduction scene was a little bit odd, but maybe that's just my taste. Also, why did Jacob remember? Like pretty much immediately. Why not just save that surprise for the next film? I also didn't think that Graves was going to be Grindelwald, but more like a follower of Grindelwald's. I think it would have been better to have Graves escape, report to Grindelwald that he lost Credence, and have Grindelwald kill him right then and there and only show a small portion of his face, or maybe do even a small face reveal at the last second. That way you set up the plot for the next movie while also keeping the character of Graves his own separate character. But again, these are just some small nitpicks at this point. This movie was a pretty good film, and I'm excited to see the sequel. So I'm gonna give this one a 7 out of 10. Are there any details that I missed out on? Let me know in the comments below. Of course, leave a sub to show some love and to be notified when I release my review of The Crimes of Grindelwald. And as always, have a marvelous day.